Good evening, race fans, and welcome to Podium Esports coverage of the Top Flight Computers 125, the fourth race of the fall season for the Esports Racing League presented by SimSeats. Live tonight for the virtual Daytona International Speedway in Daytona Beach, Florida. I am James Pike, the voice of Podium Esports, alongside Justin Prince, Jeff Marconi, and tonight's producer Ryan Bauer, powered by Top Flight Computers. We welcome you this evening, whether you're watching along on the ERL Twitch or Facebook, YouTube, Trovo, Twitter. If you're on one of Anthony Alfredo's pages, one of Podium Esports pages, we welcome you one and all wherever you may be for Daytona Week, Justin Prince. The plate races always bring out a lot of people. A lot of racing goes down when the official series visit Daytona and Talladega, and I would say that this week is no exception. Daytona under the lights, always an entertaining show, and you will be not lacking for action across the evening. There's going to be something happening all over this racetrack for the full length, the full 50 laps that we're going to go tonight. You're in for a treat if you wanted to be on the edge of your seat for the whole race.
It's going to be very tense throughout the field tonight, to say the very least. A lot of intensity and a lot of guts, as well as a lot of luck, has to be taken when you're at Daytona International Speedway. This 2.5-mile facility, known for its big-time history and known for its big-time finishes. But on the super speedway portion of this racetrack, on its 18 degrees of banking down the front stretch, 31 degrees in the corners, and 2 degrees down the back straightaway, it's known for 2-3 wide racing action. We're expecting that to be the same case tonight. The question is going to be, how clean will the drivers be for 125 miles and one needed pit stop under green?
You saw where we are on planet Earth on our map look-in just a little bit ago. Daytona International Speedway, not terribly far away from Interstate 95. You come off the exit and go a mile towards the ocean, and you find this, the World Center of Racing over on Speedway Boulevard, one of the most famous racetracks in all the world and home to a myriad of racing events. None more important than the Daytona 500 in real life, but plenty of action that you'll see over the course of the year at Daytona and the virtual Daytona. And this is but one of those places. This is the fourth race in the season. We've got a few good ones coming up. Darlington, Richmond, Las Vegas in the mix. Talladega too. It's going to be a lot of fun, JP, to see these drivers go at it, because this is a stacked field. Some of the best that made it through both the time attack and the heats that were used to qualify 64 drivers into the league. And you got some big-time names here. Maybe Zach Novak, the defending eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series champion, arguably the biggest of them all, and his teammate Jimmy Mullis at Richmond Raceway Esports, but not the only big names in here.
Absolutely, you have plenty of big names, including drivers who are competing in the Road to Pro Series. Some of the top drivers, mind you, in all of NIS competition. Several of these competitors took part in NIS in preparation for tonight's action. So expect a lot of these drivers to be well prepared for what to expect for the plate race tonight. And to say the very least, anyone can win this type of race, and anyone too, mind you, who doesn't have a guaranteed spot for the grid can get bumped out. Perfect example, one of the drivers we've seen do very well last week, James, at Gateway, and Blake McCandless, he won one of the NIS splits tonight. He DNQ'd for this one.
You have to be good when it comes to qualifying here. It's the best of the best, and there are no free passes. We get set to bring you the grid for tonight's Top Flight Computers 125, Race 4 of the fall season for the Esports Racing League, presented by SimSeats. As Justin Patello will lead the field to the green with a time of 47.325 seconds. Lucas Cram will start on his outside. Nick Indelicato and Michael Finlayson start from that second row. Third row will be Justin Brown in the 81, best qualifying effort of the season for him, and for Zach Novak, who comes off a strong run in last night's eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series event right here at the Oval at Daytona International Speedway. Evan Rice will start from the 7th position. 8th will be the 37 of Tresley Sora. Jared Ickes and Alec Martinez round out the top 10, JP.
11th spot tonight goes to Jimmy Mullis with Caden Rush in 12th position. Dylan Bazin starts in 13th spot with Burrows in 14th spot. One of the drivers who had to qualify their way in. Matt Denson starts in 15th position with Alexander Kronke 1/1000 of a second off him in 16th position. Routing at the top 20, Eli Hinton alongside Bernard LaPrade with Alex Bell starting alongside Nick Olson, who finally qualifies his way into a race this season.
First time Nick Olson's race in the ERL this season, as AJ Stravato will start from 21st. 22nd will be Ben Baffert. Brandon McKissick and Connor Horn make up row 12. Blake Reynolds and Eddie Kerner. One of the top drivers in the point standings. Reynolds, of course, your winner a few weeks ago here on the road course at Daytona. They'll start from row 13. Row 14 belongs to Donovan Strauss and Tucker Minter, your points leader coming into this evening. 29th and 30th belong to Nathan Lyon, who won last week at Worldwide Technology Raceway at Gateway, and Adam de Blasio.
Colton Salek deep in the field tonight alongside Garrison Hogan 31st and 32nd, Nathan Rabideau and Zachary Phillips 33rd and 34th. Among the air drivers towards the back, Ryan Kendrick, John Midget, along with Steven Rosales, Adam Neddens making one of his first starts of the season, Colby Wells and Braxton DeWeese will start shotgun in 40th.
As we take a look at our track facts and tell you a little bit more about the World Center of Racing. This Daytona International Speedway in Daytona Beach, Florida, a 2.5-mile, 4.02-kilometer circuit that opened in 1959. There are 31 degrees of banking in the turns, 18 degrees of banking in the tri-oval, and 2 degrees of banking on the back straight and the stretches of pavement connecting the turns and that tri-oval. We go for 50 laps, 125 miles, 200 kilometers this evening. In sim, it is currently the default day on iRacing, May 15, 2020, just before 7:50 p.m. Eastern Local Time. Currently, it is 65 degrees Fahrenheit air temp, 66 degrees Fahrenheit track temp. Winds headed to the southeast, 3 miles an hour, and humidity of 60%. Jeffrey McConey is our third voice this evening, and you may have heard him if you pay attention to Stafford Speedway, both in real life or in the virtual world. And Jeffrey, before we go green flag racing, welcome to Podium Esports, and what are you most looking forward to this evening?
Well, thank you. I think personally I'm most looking forward to calling this race alongside you guys, but I'm really excited to see some of the side-by-side action here. These are some of the best drivers on iRacing, but that all gets thrown out the window. I mean, you can be running dead last and work your way all the way up to the front. I've seen cars make the outside work all by themselves. It's all about the runs you get, the timing you make, so the strategy going on behind the wheel for these drivers is going to be what I'm waiting to see.
We'll see how it all pans out as the pace car pulls down on pit road. And Jabo Justin Vitello, winner of Monza Madness that Landon Castle put on Easter Sunday, leads the field to green, and we are underway. And the Top Flight Computers 125. Race number 4 of the fall season for the Esports Racing League, presented by SimSpeeds. And they head off into the night here at the World Center of Racing. And Patello and Lucas Cram go side by side into 1 and 2. Absolutely nothing between the two as everybody begins to stack up, and they start forming lines 2 by 2 by 2. One car already dropping back a little bit further, getting out of the way and trying to make sure that they don't end up in trouble. Looks like it may well be. If we slide a little bit further back, we'll take a peek and see how it's all going to shake out. But a very interesting one, JP, to see drivers already get to the back and try to avoid the madness.
Well, there's two different strategies, right, to try to avoid potential trouble. Some drivers like to be up towards the front and be one of the aggressors early on in the race and keep track position. The others like to hang out in the back, wait until they know they're good on the fuel, and once it's go time, start pushing. The main thing, though, was, especially for drivers last night in the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series race, they knew there was a timing of that. For some of them, they expected to try and push even a quarter way through that respective race. May see some of those drivers elect to ride tonight, but others, such as some of the teammates up towards the front, working together to try and get up towards the front, as we're seeing with some of the Sunoco cars in the top line.
I was about to say that we've got 2 Sunoco cars playing that game pretty nicely. Michael Finlayson and Zach Novak. Novak, of course, well known. We mentioned him just a little bit ago. He's the defending eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series champion. He also drives for Richmond Raceway Esports, fueled by Sunoco, and drives that number 90 Sunoco machine in the Coke Series in 2020. That car inspired by Judy Donlevy, the longtime Richmond native who drove the number 90 and then owned the number 90 in so many NASCAR Cup Series events back in the 1980s and 1990s. Incidentally enough, if we're talking about the Richmond Raceway Esports drivers, there's another one in the field, Jimmy Mullis, who won the season opener at Michigan back at the beginning of August, is a little bit further back in this pack. He currently runs in the 13th, 14th position. He's out there on that, well, we'll call it outside. We've got one car to his outside, though, but he's hanging in that second lane and trying to work his way up to the number 90 machine as Michael Finlayson drops in front of Justin Patello to take the race lead. And Jeffrey McConey, they're already all over the place here, and we're only 2 laps of 50 into this race.
We're only 2 laps in, and what we've seen a lot so far is these cars darting side to side, and that could be the result of a crosswind on the backstretch. That's been happening a lot. But these cars are very unstable. You feel any air on it, and it just wants to move around. That's not these drivers moving the wheel. They're keeping the wheel straight, and the car just jumps from side to side. It takes a really skilled driver to be able to see that coming and account for it, especially at 200 miles an hour.
I think anyone who's had the chance to drive the Ford Thunderbird or the Chevrolet Monte Carlo, the 1987 cars that iRacing released at the beginning of June, will know exactly what Jeffrey's talking about. The aero push and the aero sensitivity is much more pronounced in those cars, but it's also something that you see here with these modern cars. Yes, technology has improved in the 30 years since we ran those 1987 machines, Justin Prince, but that's not to say that these things are invulnerable to a little bit of wind. It will affect them, especially down the back straightaway, as we see them go 3 wide up at the front of the field, and the 40 machine of Caden Rush now dragging Jimmy Mullis alongside his teammate Zach Novak.
Yeah, and some of the lockdown racing cars trying to push their way up to the front and work together, it seems like, up at the front of this pack, leaving Jabo out to dry. But to get back to that exact point, one of the main discussion points last night especially was, once you got to around 20 laps on the tires or so, give or take, the car would start to push around the racetrack, especially on the middle to high lines. A lot of drivers were shouting on the radio, in fact, they were tight, especially in the fight for the checkered flag. So that may be something that comes into play. All while it looks like Jabo saying, you know what, you guys have fun, I'm dropping to the back again.
Jabo sliding back to get out of this. And for those unaccustomed to plate racing and those who might be watching for the first time, Jeffrey, it seems a little bit counterintuitive to try and drop to the back, but with the way racing goes here at Daytona and Talladega, it might not be the worst thing in the world because it gives you the opportunity to avoid the big one, potentially.
Absolutely. When you go to any other track, an intermediate, a short track, or anywhere in between, you're out there running and you're relying on yourself. You're racing as much against yourself as you are other people around you. However, when you take these cars to a super speedway where you're not worried about lifting, you're not worried about your braking points, you're just focusing on your rear view mirror, seeing where the runs are, and looking out in front of you and seeing who's ahead of you, you can drop to the back. And really, when you're running one of these races, there's 2 places you want to be. Out front, ahead of the wreck that is inevitably coming, or way in back so you can jump on the brakes and not get involved in the wreck that's inevitably coming. When you come to these super speedways, you're mainly focused on avoiding the big wreck that always happens.
More often than not, we see it. NASCAR introducing restrictor plates in 1988 to help slow down these cars at Daytona and Talladega. At the time, they were traveling in excess of 211, 212 miles an hour off into these corners, and NASCAR made the decision to put restrictor plates on the air intakes of these cars to limit the amount of horsepower they could produce and ultimately slow the cars down. It did slow the cars down, of course, but it also created these packs that you see of 15 or 20 cars in restrictor plate racing. And everybody runs so tightly now at the plate tracks that if somebody wrecks up at the very front, they're moving so quickly and you have so little time to react that more often than not, if someone crashes at the front, it's almost guaranteed that you're going to see at least 10 to 15 cars involved in the incident that will follow, JP, and then you have nowhere to go. Getting out of that lead pack and going to the back, though, is one way. Some might argue the best way to avoid that.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're seeing many of them just staying in a single file, waiting in that line just to see what happens with the 3 wide up towards the front of the pack here. But remember, one of the main things was, in terms of the adjustments in some of the most recent builds to match the current Super Speedway package after the start of the 2020 season in real life for the Cup Series, there were adjustments to try and slow things down the drag a little bit, trying to adjust some of the speeds of the cars, and they're going up to 200 to 205 miles an hour just about the entire way around the racetrack. In turn, one little mistake, you push up the track, you bobble on a corner entry, you nearly slip up a quarter of a lane, it may lead you getting turned around, and that's why drivers like Blake Reynolds here are probably thinking, I'm going to let these drivers fight and then move up towards the front of the pack once I know I'm good on the fuel. That's a mindset, remember, that can come into play starting in about even 5 laps when you're good to go on the fuel.
You could indeed try and short pit if you think this is going to go green the whole way, which mathematically isn't probable, but it's certainly possible. It would be advantageous to come down early and just run out that final run of fuel all the way to the end. Go about, call it 36 or 7 laps or so. So JP's right. We're not terribly far away from the fuel window opening if this race finishes under its scheduled distance. Now, if we get a late yellow flag and we go to a green, white, checker finish, that will extend the race, and we could go anywhere in the ballpark of 57 or 58 laps, and then you have an entirely different fuel strategy game to play, Jeff and McCarty. So, if you're top of the box and you're a crew chief, what are you watching for when you're making your decisions, and what ultimately is influencing the calls you make?
If I'm up there on top of the box calling this race...
Oh, crash in the pack, guys.
Oh, big one.
Already yellow flag out on lap 11 as our first major incident of the evening comes into play, and a lot of cars sideways here. We'll figure out what happened in just a moment. Take a look at the replay, but a lot of madness going on here, and looks like Nick Olson, I think, is probably where this starts, JP. A little bit of help from the 23 of Ben Baffert, and that's where it all starts.
Yeah, and keep in mind, take a look at the replay here. There's a mix of a little bit of both here because Olsen tried to fill the gap, get to the bottom. The problem is there's a car coming in on by. Baffert not willing to check up at that time, didn't even lift as he started arcing on down, and bam, back half of the field gets collected. They were very aggressive towards that line just before the single file, and now about 15, 20 cars collected here.
Where do you even begin? Just reading also the names. Adam Needhams, Garrison Hogan, Donovan Strauss, Alexander Kronke was involved, Steven Rosales, Eddie Kerner, Jared Ickes, Nathan Rabideau, Matt Danson, Brandon McKissick, Colby Wells, Ryan Kendrick, Baffert we already mentioned, Alec Martinez, Connor Horn got some damage, Justin Patello just snuck through on the top side. He waited for everyone to get around to him. So how about that? If you want an interesting twist, J-Bo decides to go to the back, and Jeffrey McCody, he manages to sneak his way so far back and stay high enough, recognizing that everybody eventually was going to come sweeping down to the inside. If you stay up there long enough, you're in the back of the field, so long as you don't completely come to a stop, you can ride right along the wall and avoid the incident the same way J-Bo just did.
Absolutely. Anthony talked about it when he was here on the broadcast last week about self-cleaning racetracks. These really steep banked tracks, the cars, as they're wrecking, will slide down to the bottom. So Justin did exactly what he needed to do. Get up to the top, slow down, don't come to a full stop so you don't get run over from behind, but just get up to the top, let all the cars slide to the bottom and get through perfectly clean. I guess he made the smart move there going to the back.
We've got Ben Baffert's perspective via chat already. He says that it was the third time that Nick Olson had come down in front of him this race in an 11-lap span, and that he wasn't going to lift anymore. We're sort of done with that. And that, I think, explains a lot and says a lot about the patience of these drivers and maybe etiquette of plate racing too, JP, that, you can get a run on people, but you would think more often than not that if you are the one that is being caught, that you more often than not want to try and slide high and stay out of the way, just because the closing rates are so different, and you can end up in situations like we just had where I think Baffert closed so quickly on Olson that Olson certainly was trying to come down in front of him, but just didn't give himself enough time to get down properly, and that's where the incident started.
That's actually a great point, because remember, one of the main things talked about when this initial package came out on the super speedways back in 2019 was the closing rate. It's much more quicker compared to what it was before, and for some drivers, they were able to adapt very quickly. For others, you still see that window where they think it's going to be the same as back in the day to prior to that. So on just a mix a little bit of both, where you have to be smart on where you play the lines. If you aren't smart, you end up collecting 15, 20 cars as a result, who end up becoming modified as a result as we get ready for the one to go.
One to go coming here. All these drivers getting everyone set and ready to go as they line up behind the pace car. We'll remind you all that tonight's broadcast of the Esports Racing League is brought to you by our friends at SimSeats. SimSeats, the official partner of the ERL, and handing off a $300 gift card to the champion at season's end. Since 2009, SimSeats has been designing and fabricating high-quality driving simulators, including motion systems, custom fabricated parts, and complete turnkey iRacing packages, all made in the United States of America. Their customer base includes all kinds of drivers, from amateurs to professionals, and their passion for racing drives them to build better sim racing equipment. Don't limit your track time to the weekend. Visit www.sim-seats.com for more information and find out how you can get behind the wheel of a SimSeats rig today. We will get the restart on lap 15 of 50, working our way to the, I guess, 2/5 mark of this race, somewhere in the ballpark of, but already a little bit further along than you would expect. This race, half the distance of last night's feature for the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series, and it will be Michael Finlayson who leads us to the green flag ahead of Lucas Cram on the outside. Cram, the champion of the ERL Sportsman Division from the spring, which ran the Class B stock cars used in the NASCAR Xfinity Series. But up in a cup car is Lucas Cram, and he will carry on the outside, and Finlayson and Cram will carry the entire field up in 1 and 2, and big runs there for the inside Jeffrey McCarty. Sunoco cars are working very well together, and it's a Sunoco Toyota 1-2 as they come out of turn 2.
Go ahead, Jeff.
I was going to say that's exactly what you need to have here. When you're running with someone else out there, you have to make sure that they're going to stay on your side. They're going to hang with you. Friends become best friends here at Daytona and Talladega because you can work together. And as long as you don't hang that other person out to dry, you can work together really, really well.
And bad news for the rest of the field. Look who's right behind Zach Novak in the number 90 machine. It is his teammate in the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series, his lockdown racing teammate as well, Jimmy Moles in the number 46 Coca-Cola Energy machine. Right there behind the 90. That's the last thing the rest of the field wanted to see.
Absolutely, and keep in mind, 4 of the top 5 drivers up in the front right now are technical alliance mates. As in, they work together in the respective cars. Finlayson works with Lockdown Racing on that side with the Sunoco machine. Works with Novak in Molis in that regard. You also have LaPrade, who is also part of the Burton Kligerman Esports' development program side of things, as part of that technical alliance as well. So they have the chance to control the bubble at this point up towards the front.
I was about to say, if you hadn't gone on to the Burton Kligerman Esports colors, you'll see a little bit of up there, especially in the number 19 machine, one of the Burton Kligerman Esports affiliates, Briar LaPrade, Patriot Briar, in the Ledford Billiard Supply Toyota Camry, the second car on that high line. And yes, we have some Coke Series drivers in this series, but some big names from the iRacing world as well. And Briar, one of the most prominent streamers in iRacing out of Manchester, Tennessee, and a name that if you're around this community, often Jeffrey McConey, you've heard Briar, you've raced Briar, you've seen Briar, and most of us know that when it comes to actually driving one of these stock cars, Briar's got a tremendous amount of talent behind the wheel.
He absolutely does, and he's up there on the outside line. Definitely someone that can make something happen and make some noise, but I think right now he's content to just ride around, be smart, maybe give Lucas a bit of a push if he wants to make a run. But notice he's keeping about a foot of gap between the back bumper of Lucas Cram and his front bumper. He gets a little bit of air in his front end. He's not going to overheat the car or anything. It also prevents him from hooking that rear bumper. You don't need to push. You don't need to be aggressive here. You can just ride around and chill. We're only at lap 18.
You got Presley Sora in that mix too. Eli Hinton is there. Caden Rush, who we've seen be aggressive. And then one driver who definitely knows how to be aggressive. Another one of the Coke Series Brigade. And this, how about the driver in the Coke Series car, racing for Team Dillon Esports. Of course, affiliated with Austin Dillon, driver for Richard Childress Racing in the NASCAR Cup Series. And not only a former Forsyth Country Day School and High Point University graduate, but also allied with ERL owner Anthony Alfredo. So Reynolds here putting on a good show in the number 3 machine with Coke colors aboard, and we're right on board, and you'll see just how mad it can get in this pack and just how much you can see or can't see out the front windshield. That's another point that we haven't had the chance to make yet, JP, is that when you're running up behind these cars, you will maybe be lucky if you can see about 2 or 3 cars ahead of you tops, and if you're buried in the field and you're maybe the 7th or 8th car back, if they wreck to the front, you're not going to see what happens until it's more often than not too late.
Yeah, they're not transparent, but yeah, it also affects the reaction time, though, James, in that regard. Like, if anything was to happen, like a major check, that's where communication has to come into play from the drivers in the said line. For example, you may start building up a little bit of a run and might not notice that. That's why you see drivers, again, like Reynolds, not just trying to get air to the nose and make sure they don't get too close to the back end, to make sure they have enough cushion in case there's a check, as well as to give themselves some wiggle room. So in other words, just keep it in. Essentially, nice and calm to be able to prepare for a check like what just happened on the bottom side there, just in case that all can happen all in one sequence.
And as we carry on in tonight's Top Flight Computers 125, we remind you that our coverage of the Esports Racing League is brought to you by our friends at Top Flight Computers. Top Flight Computers is a small group of tech enthusiasts based in Raleigh, North Carolina, who love to work with computers. They design high-end systems specializing in workstations, gaming computers, and custom water cooling systems. The team at Top Flight Computers knows that every customer is different and that their PC should match their specific needs. Whether you're using your computer to make a living or playing games every once in a while, you deserve the best computer possible to help you succeed. Financing is available on custom builds via Square Capital and PayPal Credit. And for more information, you can visit www.toplinepc.com today and use the code TFCRB1 during the quote process to save 5% on your next custom build from Top Flight Computers. We'll have Chris Johnson come in a little bit. He's the technology consultant at TFC, and we'll hear a little bit more about how they build the best computers for you later on in this race. But at the moment, we'll continue to watch this group at the front of the field where the Richmond Raceway Esports drivers have split up, but they're now controlling the lanes. You've got Mullis up high, you've got Novak down low, and Jeffrey McConey, you've got some racing experience. Tell the fans at home a little bit about the differences between marshaling a field from the top and the bottom as opposed to marshaling one lane nose to tail, as we see Mullis duck back down and drop in front of the 90. But it's two different kinds of controlling a pack. And for those who might not be aware, what are some of the differences between those two different forms of controlling a pack?
It's all about what your intention is. When you're on the inside line, you're mostly riding. You're almost anticipating a wreck, and you're sitting down there so that you can turn the wheel to the left, get out of the way, get that car down to the bottom into some open real estate and avoid the wreck. If you're running up top, your goal is to pass cars. Your goal is to get out to the front and get the lead here. And if you're not first in line on the outside line, your goal is to get more energy to that outside line. Keep it going, keep pushing hard, and get that outside line to the front. The outside line makes passes, the inside line is holding on.
The inside line hanging on and hanging on well. There's Lucas Cram now up to the outside here and leading Briar LaPrade. Presley Sora up there in that top lane. AJ Stravato is there. Donovan Strauss. We haven't had the chance to talk about Donovan, but he's another one affiliated in particular tonight with Briar LaPrade. He too an affiliate of the Burton Kligerman Esports program, started by Parker Kligerman of NBC Sports and Henderson Motorsports fame of the NASCAR Gander RV and Outdoors Truck Series. But recognizing some of the most prominent streamers on Twitch in the iRacing universe. So Brian LaPrade is part of that group. And Donovan Strauss is part of that group. You've got, trying to think of all the other names, JP, we've got somebody, David Schildhouse, who just hit Twitch Partner earlier today, also part of that group. Some of the biggest names on this platform involved with BKE.
Absolutely, and it just shows the importance again of media presence, especially being able to stream for drivers to know you as well as fans to know you at a personal level and watch you as you try and race in events such as this tonight. It's something a lot of teams have been starting to focus more and more on and can expect to see a lot more of it in the future. These drivers, though, getting a little bit dicey here at the halfway mark this time.
Definitely dicier here as we have crossed halfway, and it's time to bring you our iRacing Midway Race Break, which is brought to you by iRacing, the world's premier online racing game. iRacing puts you in the driver's seat to experience today's newest form of competitive motorsport, virtual racing, all from your home PC. Race virtually in the Australian Supercars, IndyCar, IMSA, NASCAR, the world of outlaws, and more. Jimmy Mullis, your leader that last time by. Lucas Cram, or actually Zach Novak, your leader last time by. Lucas Cram was third at the stripe behind Mullis in second. Michael Femlinson currently scored in fourth. Fifth to Brian LaPrade. Evan Rice sixth. Seventh to Presley Sora. Eighth to Eli Hinton. AJ Servato and Blake Reynolds made up the top 10 that last time by, JP.
Just on by the stripe, about the same as Donovan Strauss inside the top 11. Nathan Lyon, last week's race winner, in 12th position. Caden Rush in 13th. Matt Danson, he dropped to the back early on. He's now up to 14th once again. Rosales is up to 15th. Hogan is up to 16th from 32nd starting position, with Phillips up to 17th position. Alex Bell's in 18th. Your pole setter and J-Bo still watching along in 19th. John Midget rounds out your top 20 at the moment.
21st is Anthony Burrows. 22nd belongs to Nick Indelicato. Adam de Blasio runs in 23rd. 24th belongs to Alec Martinez. Connor Horn scored 25th at this time. 26th is Braxton DeWeese. Colton Salek is 27th. 28th belongs to Dylan Basin. Justin Brown and Nathan Rabideau complete the top 30.
Only one our driver of the lead lap, Eddie Kerner, currently driving a damaged car. That drafting pack features 28th on to 31st. One lap down is Tucker Minter. Brandon McKissick also involved in that last caution. Ryan Kendrick, Alexander Kroenke, Eckes also 5 laps down on the racetrack. The rest of the drivers are out. Olsen in the 35 machine, Wells, Neddens, and Bafford round out your entries tonight.
And that concludes tonight's iRacing Midway Race Break. With over 170,000 drivers on the service and over 90 laser scan tracks and cars to choose from, iRacing is your portal to the racing world. Get on track today at iRacing.com. Big news, of course, in the iRacing world on that front over the past few days. Two things. We heard the Dallara LMP2 come to life for the first time a few days ago, and today we saw a few more screenshots of the Nashville Fairgrounds Speedway, one of the most historic racetracks in the country and the oldest continuously operating speedway in the United States, open since 1904. Jeffrey McConaughey, and at 5/8 of a mile should be a lot of fun, I think, to tackle that place when it comes online in 2 weeks' time.
It's a very exciting time. Another tiny little track. I'm a big fan of short tracks, so it's going to be very, very cool to have all that come together. There's so much stuff that's coming in the future here for iRacing. So if you're not on board, this is the perfect time to jump in, get yourself a wheel and pedals, and get on board, because then you can be a part of racing like this. We got some 3-wide action going on. Lucas Cram to the lead, Zach Novak there in second place. But a little further back, you see that 00 and Justin Vitello behind him. They're trying to make a run all the way at the wall here. We're at lap 30. We're 60% of the way through this race for the math freaks out there. This is the time to make something happen and start working your way up.
We'll keep our eyes on this battle, but we'll take a moment to turn our attention back to the booth, and we will bring in Chris Johnson with Top Flight Computers, the technology consultant at TFC. And Chris, welcome to Podium Esports. Welcome to Sim Racing. This your first ever experience at iRacing and an iRacing broadcast, and I have to believe it's been an eventful one so far for you.
Hey guys, thanks for having me. Yeah, it's definitely my first one, and it's definitely been really cool. I had an idea of what iRacing was, but it's definitely a lot more exciting to watch it.
It's a little bit more like TV, but we're here to talk about Top Flight Computers, so let's learn a little bit more about Top Flight Computers and what you all do for the community, especially those based in Raleigh and Raleigh-Durham in the Triangle area of North Carolina where you're based.
Well, we build custom computers, workstations. We can do either air-cooled, and we also do very cool custom loops. We believe that we have a nice personal touch, and that's what keeps people coming back to us. A lot of our customers seem surprised when I call them and try to talk to them personally about what they're looking for in a system. But I think that's pretty important to do, because I can definitely get, something that's much closer to what people are looking for instead of just a random list that they might find online.
There are many random lists, but I think for those who are not familiar with the whole concept of building your own computer, it sounds daunting, but there are actually a lot of advantages that building your own PC has compared to buying a pre-built one. So what does a custom PC build offer that you wouldn't get if you just went to the store and bought one yourself?
Um, that can vary if, depending on what you're trying to do. If you just want something really, really pretty and shiny, we can put a ton of lights on there and RGB fans and anything, and it will be a showstopper anytime someone walks in the room and sees it. On the other hand, if you're doing something that's involving AI learning or a lot of, heavy machine learning things, then we can also throw in a system with 4 GPUs in there. We can just do pretty much anything you're looking for, and that's what we really strive to do. When you buy something from the store, you're going to get a set, something that was set by possibly a corporation or even someone that doesn't really know a whole lot about ideal computer specs. And a lot of these times, these companies will use cheap parts because you're never going to open them up and look and see what they've used.
You might not necessarily get the best quality, but you might not necessarily get something that's geared to what you're trying to do. You mentioned the AI learning and the need for multiple CPUs, but if you're sim racing here and you're gaming, the CPU power is important to a point, but more often than not, you're looking at RAM and you're looking at GPU power and a good graphics card to put your system a cut above everybody else, and that's what you all at Top Flight can piece together, no?
I'm sorry, maybe I didn't come through clearly. I said 4 GPUs for the machine learning and AI stuff. But yes, definitely for racing games, you're going to benefit obviously from a good CPU, but with a lot of people, especially if they're using multiple monitors, they want to have one of the best GPUs out there because they want to look at it in 2K, 4K, and people are even trying to build system now that can handle 8K. And you just can't really, buy something that's going to be reliable and be able to do that as easily without spending a ridiculous amount of money if you go through Best Buy or Dell or whatever.
I think it also says a lot that Ryan Bowers, computer, our producer, runs on a Top Flight PC, and this was a PC that wasn't necessarily designed to produce, and yet here we are, and all the sights and sounds that you see on your screens at home are coming at you in full 1080p 60 hertz frame rate, and all pretty powerful. I think a big testament to the overall quality of a Top Flight build, even though it might not necessarily be a production PC. It's been turned into one, and it's turned out pretty well at the end of the day.
Right, exactly. We also, obviously, if we have the capabilities and the client has the budget, we will like to provide them with a system that has room for easy upgradability or even one that will be future-proof. We ideally will have any system we build for you keep you very well functioning for at least 2 years, but people have come back to us in less time because they like to buy the newest, greatest GPUs or CPUs. Or some people will switch a job and they just need something that can handle a different type of workflow.
We'll take a look at the yellow flag in just a moment, but before we do, if people want to find out more about Top Flight computers, Chris, who do they need to turn to and where do they need to look?
They can go to topflightpc.com. If they turn in a submission form, tell us what they're looking for. They'll definitely be receiving a call from me pretty shortly after, and I'll definitely try and help you get, your new system.
Chris, thanks as always for taking the time to jump into the booth and speak with us. And best of luck to all of you at Top Flight PC, and enjoy the ending of tonight's race. It's Daytona, so we might be screaming at the top of our lungs at the end of it. You never quite know what's going to happen here, but you'll probably want to stay tuned for the next 15 laps or so.
I'll be here till the end of the race. Thanks a lot for having me, guys.
That's Chris Johnson, technology consultant with Top Flight Computers, as we go under the second yellow flag of the evening. And that was lap traffic through JP. Everybody trying to squeeze through the lap traffic coming out of turn 4. Tucker Minter, your points leader, down on the bottom. Looks like it was Ryan Kendrick up top, and they were both trying to stay out of the way, but it's just really hard to make 4 wide work at Daytona, especially coming out of turn 4.
Yeah, 4 wide's never good at Daytona for one. It is doable, but that's what can happen, as we've seen on the back on this front straightaway. But the second thing is, when it comes to managing lap traffic, you want both the lap cars in the same place. You don't want them to be staggered out like they were with one on the top, one on the bottom, like right here. This is a recipe for disaster. Most drivers are starting to go towards the bottom, as it is in real life, where they try to blend in with the pack. Others like to stay on the top if they feel off the pace. That time, one felt one way, one did the other thing, and around the back half of the lead pack went.
Presley Sora was the one who took the hardest hit. He bounced off the side of Steven Rosales, and went into the inside retaining wall. And at that point, it goes back to what we talked about earlier, Jeffrey, in the sense that when things happen that quickly, even if you're towards the back of that pack, as Rosales and Sora were, there's so little time to react that there's not much you can do about it. And Sora tried to get out of the way. You could see him getting down to the apron, but just ran out of time, bounced off Rosales, and that's largely night and done for Sora's machine.
You're exactly right. And when these cars are damaged at a super speedway, it's very difficult to come back from it unless every other car is damaged, because the aerodynamics are so important. You need to be able to sit behind someone and get sucked right up to them in that draft, or you need to be able to push someone else in front of you. It's very difficult to make that happen when you have any sort of aero damage. But if your engine is damaged as well, that's going to be the end of your night.
Right. All fair, all valid points. And, normally I would take this time to tell everybody about Marconi Setup Shop, but I feel like we have someone slightly more qualified to talk about Marconi Setup Shop than in here. So, Jeff, why not you tell the folks about Marconi Setup Shop and what they can expect from you all in your operation?
Well, we've started up in the past 2.5 months and have really exploded in popularity. We just wrapped up a sale that we had going on. It was 20% off because in 2 weeks of having the store open, we fully automated our store. We just could not keep up with all the demand. So we automated our store, and in 2 weeks we had 100 orders, not 100 setups sold, 100 orders. So it's at this point hard pressed to get into a lobby without someone running a Marconi Setup Shop setup somewhere or the other. And they have been absolutely amazing on the super speedways at Daytona this week. We've sold 30 of those this week alone, and they have been really all over victory lane. We have been up front in the trucks, the Xfinity, and the Cup Series, making things happen. We do everything from the Legends to the Cup cars, though. We have driver coaching available, and if you're sitting out there and you're wondering, you want to build your own setups, but you just don't know where to go with it, you can message our page, Marconi Setup Shop, on Facebook, and someone will get back to you, and we will offer you advice and consultation and everything for free, even if it's not one of our setups. If you never buy anything from us and you need some advice, we'll help you out. There's sponsorship requests available on our website that you can apply for, and we'll help you out monetarily with your league, maybe a race, a special event. We're involved in a little bit of everything here on iRacing, and you just, you can't get into a lobby anymore without Marconi Setup Shop setups being in there somewhere. So head on over, $5 a piece, but there's bulk deals if you buy in bulk. Next season, it's going to be $50, all, everything said and done for an entire season of cars. So there's a deal for everyone out there. We do deals for leagues as well. For the entire season for leagues. A little bit of everything over at the Marconi Setup Shop. That's www.marconisetupshop.com. If you just want to go hit the store and hit the track right away, that's www.marconisetupshop.com/shop to get right to our store, and you can get ready to go.
If you aren't running with one, then you'll be running behind one.
Exactly.
Setup Shop says as we get set to go green flag racing, Lucas Cram did not pit. He is your leader coming to lap 40. We'll hit 10 laps to go this time by as you see some of the upcoming events coming in the world of iRacing. Cars Esports Tour coming up at 9 on the Podium Esports Twitch channel, so stick around for that if you're already on the Podium Esports Twitch channel. Otherwise, flip over there at 9 p.m. to see them from Larry Kinglaw's Langley Speedway. And a whole lot more coming over the next week that we'll tell you about in a little bit. But right now, all eyes on Lucas Cram and Brian LaPrade and Michael Fenderson and Zach Novak, Jimmy Mullis, Blake Reynolds, Nathan Lyon, Donovan Strauss up there, Caden Rush. You're starting to see the best of the best make their charge late, JP. It is about time to make your presence known at the front of this field if you want to win this race.
And a lot of the Coke drivers we talked about who are waiting towards the back now making the way up towards the front with some of the pals here, as well as some of the top series contenders needing some strong points. The main concern is if you're Lucas Cram here is, do you have enough gas? Because it could be tight if we get a GWC. Everybody else, as mentioned, did come down and top off on the fuel and take 2 tires. So they'll also have some extra grip. He doesn't have as many playmates to help him here as here come the lockdown cars.
Here comes Zach Novak with help from Brian LaPrade, with help from Michael Finlayson. 3 Toyotas working at the top of the racetrack and all bypassing Cram on the entry into the corner, but Cram on the inside gets that big run, and he'll be the leader off of turn 4.
Down the front straightaway once again, a bit of a push once again from Moas, trying to get the shove to the 44 machine across the stripe. 9 laps to go. Lyon now joining the fray. So is Donovan Strauss as they make their way through turns 1 and 2, looking to fight side by side, several rows deep. Several of the drivers with early trouble making their way also back up towards the front as well, down the backstretch, Jeff.
These drivers are now cutting it very close. You see, they're all trying to make a move where they might have said, oh, it's too early before. Now they will take that move. They will cut down in front, and they're going to make these bold moves. It's going to be very close for some of these cars, and we're going to see a lot more bump drafting here soon, I think, with only 9 to go, 8 at the line.
Zach Novak still leading the field. They'll take off their carry on. Coming to 8 to go. Beginning to click it down. And Novak still out in front, down onto the apron into turn 1.
Right now, Novak leading the way, but that is not for long. Briar LaPrade up on the outside. He's getting right up on that door of Lucas Cram. That's pulling some air off. It's slowing him down, but here comes Jimmy Mullis in the 46. Pushing hard. He's pushing the pusher, which is a dangerous game to play. But if you can trust that guy ahead of you, you can make that move happen.
Back to 3 and 4 once again as they still try shuffle. About 3 wide of the backstretch. One driver got shuffled out off to turn 4. And Delcano is now stuck on the top side down the front.
They're 2 by 2 by 2. Nothing going, nothing moving here. They complete lap 43, 44 on the board. 7 laps to go in the top flight. Computers 125 and still 10 cars up at the front. Jeff McConaughey.
Right now, they're still battling side by side, and you see they're darting around. The cars are being a little more darty side to side like we were seeing at the beginning of the race. The caution flag now in the air for a wreck.
It was Caden Rush who went around on the back straightaway as the yellow flag came out in a big incident over in turn 2 to slow us down. I see Matt Danson also involved in that wreck down the back straightaway. We'll take a look at the replay momentarily, but help, I think, from Tucker Minter might be the reason why we are under yellow. Justin Prince.
Yes, indeed. On that exit of turn 2, trying to go 3 wide from 31st position. Remember, a lap down, and you never want to bump draft in the middle of the corner. That's what happened once they got to turns 1 and 2, because keep in mind, Minter's that black and neon greenish car in the back of the pack towards that middle line. See the poke coming around from Krem. He's tried finding that third line, finding some people to work with him. But when you bump draft in the middle of the corner, it destabilizes the car and causes a lot of incidents. Right there, it's not even a square hit. Ends up just spinning him around right in front of the back part of the lead group.
Nothing much you can do if you're the 40 machine, and that's one of the trickiest places, I think, to carry momentum, especially if you're coming in behind somebody, Jeffrey, coming out of turn 2, and especially if you are the 40. If someone gets a run behind you like Minter did, and they decide to try and carry it and give you a shove off corner exit, if they time it a little bit too early, the way that Minter did, you are just about helpless, and I don't think there's much Caden Rush could have done in that situation.
Absolutely right. There's nothing that Caden really could have done there. He's been sort of exploring the high line all race. Caden Rush has in that 0-0, but he hasn't been too successful with it, but he keeps on trying, and props to him for it. And it looked like he might have found something there, but when someone comes up behind you and you've got that, and they've got that big run, and they just slam into you there's nothing you can do except hold on and try not to wreck the car. When you're in that situation and you're depending on someone else to not make a mistake, when you're behind the wheel, it's a very, very worrying feeling.
Especially when you're traveling at 190 miles an hour. It's so hair-raising, to say the least. But at this time, let's go back and talk about some of the events that you're going to see in the world of iRacing and Podium Esports over the course of the next week. We mentioned very briefly that you'll see the Gars Esports Tour from Larry Kingwall's Langley Speedway coming up tonight at 9 p.m. Eastern after we're done with our coverage of the Esports Racing League. And you can see that broadcast on twitch.tv/Podium Esports. So if you're already on the Podium Esports Twitch channel watching coverage of the ERL, stay where you are. If you aren't, flip over at 9 p.m. Eastern, and you'll see some of the best in late model and super late model racing on iRacing take to the very, very flat Langley Speedway. It is just about as pancakey as they come. That'll be it for us this week. We get back going next week, and next Sunday night we start with the Game Works Racing League from Martinsville Speedway. Broadcast will be on the Podium Esports Twitch channel at 8 p.m. Eastern before we jump to Monday night. And it's the Sim 500 Trans Service Cup Series from Darlington Raceway. We'll see that broadcast next Monday night, 9 p.m. Eastern, also on the Podium Esports Twitch channel. The ERL is back in action at Darlington Raceway next week, 7:30 p.m. Eastern start time next Wednesday night, September 2nd, on the ERL Racing Twitch channel for that one. And then a big weekend coming up on Labor Day weekend. It starts off with return of PCA Sim Racing. The 5th season of PCA Sim Racing kicks off from WeatherTech Raceway, Laguna Seca. The Porsche Cayman GT4 Cup car will be the car and vehicle of choice as the best of the best in Porsche Club of America Sim Racing across the United States and Canada will compete for top honors. You'll see all that broadcast and so much more from PCA Sim Racing on the PCA Sim Racing YouTube channel, 7 p.m. Eastern, next Friday night, September 4th. And then you've got the For the Fans Racing League Grand National Grand National Series presented by Splash & Go Graphics from Darlington Raceway. 10 p.m. Eastern start time for that, September 5th. And that broadcast you'll also be able to find on twitch.tv/Podium Esports. So plenty of events to go after this week and plenty of fun to be had. Most importantly, though, we'll come back to green flag racing not too long from now. Lights are off on the pace car. We'll have 3 laps to go when we get back to the green flag, unless we get a yellow flag, in which case we're going for a green, white checker finish, JP. And this is where this all gets very fun, especially if you're Lucas Cream, who is currently working a 34-lap run on tires and fuel. If we go green, white checker, he may have to come down pit road for a splash. He might not make it to the finish as it stands.
I mean, this caution definitely helped him save a lot more fuel. Try and clutch and coast it, and or, depending on his method, try and shut off the engine and let it roll there. So it's something that is definitely happening to be a concern, especially if we get several opportunities for them. You're seeing the same thing right now. He's even coming out of turn 4 and trying to do that a little bit to make sure he can make it to the end of this race, since he was leading the pack where you burn more fuel, mind you. It's going to be tight for him. It's going to be interesting who wins this race.
Everybody else on about 10 lap strategies here. Zach Novak will lead us to the green flag and the top flight computers 125 coming to 3 to go here. And Lucas Cram is going to get some help from Jimmy Mullins to go to the front by the time they get to 1, Jeffrey.
Gets a little bit of help, and he slides down in front of Zach Novak the second he gets clear and cuts it a little bit close. Now they are all stacked up there, and you're seeing some bumping and beating and banging on that inside line. You have to be careful when you're playing that game. But up on the outside, you have Mullis.
Once again, still trying to fight. Here comes the push from Reynolds. 5 cars fighting up towards the front. Watching along is Finlayson and several other drivers as huge shot by Novak in 3 and 4. He gets clear. Mullis now has a chance to try and push Novak at a 4.
Sunoco, Coke, Sunoco, all up on the top side. Look at the run. Zach Novak got contact in the middle of the triangle. Around goes Graham. Around goes Novak. Big one at the front of the field in the top flight computers 125. Briar LaPrade snuck through all of that to take the race lead, but a massive wreck at the front as they all started racing with 2 to go and bounced off each other. And we will have a green-white checker finish, but that was all just tough racing at the front of the field, Jeffrey McConey, and they just bounced off each other ever so slightly, as I think Briar LaPrade first might have gotten into Lucas Graham, then got into Jimmy Mullis, and they all went sideways from there.
Yeah, a little bit of chaos right there up at the front, some wiggling side to side. It looks like Briar LaPrade came up into Mullis there, and everyone was collected. Briar LaPrade got through clean, but how about Alex Bell as well, from 8th all the way up to 2nd? He just snaked his way through there like Moses parting the Red Seas. He got through clean.
Somehow, some way, he sneaks through all that. Some of the other big names that just managed to make it through. Well, to be fair, there weren't too many. Alex Bell, veteran of the first season of the ERL, was able to sneak through without any damage. I think Garrison Hogan might have come through mostly okay. Zachary Phillips looks halfway decent. Nathan Lyon picked up some damage. Colton Salick in the 99 car might actually be all right. That's one of the few cars he and Adam de Blasio look very, very clean, but a lot of cars with damage here, JP. A lot of people that are going to need to get their cars fixed back up.
Yes, several drivers with full motors, including the other 3 Coke drivers working together, but that is the perfect example of You don't want to move when you're trying to set up a bump route, because it looked like LaPrade moved up, and not just in the lowest, but while he made the contact with the bump, and in turn, several drivers had the whole track blocked with no time to react. Just about the entire field collected in that incident. My goodness.
That's carnage right there. That's when you see it really get big at Daytona. That's a perfect example of that. And especially in a wreck like that, where that starts right at the front of the field, there is nothing you can do. And especially if it happens in the tri-oval too, because everybody's already sort of heading towards the wall. And it's not like there's room to escape like you have coming out of turn 2 or out of turn 4. The aprons are paved all the way down to the wall. So if you need to, you could drive down there if a wreck starts on corner exit 2 or 4 and potentially save yourself. But in the middle of the tri-oval, you have nothing but grass to your inside, nothing to really save you. And you end up basically driving into a funnel that will chew you up and spit you out. And at the end of it all, Jeffrey McConey, there are very few cars with any sort of damage whatsoever left in this field.
Yeah, that was the big one. I say that now, but I could come to eat those words. We have a few attempts at a green-white checkered here, 3 of them. So there could be more, but there isn't really many cars left here for there to be involved in a wreck. You know, everyone's pretty much pretty heavily damaged. Lucas Cram's engine is about to explode. You see all the smoke there. I think Briar LaPrade got a little bit of front end damage, and I think Alex Bell snaked through fairly clean, but we'll have to see who makes it through here and can survive until the end of this race.
Yeah, so much to take care of here. So much to watch out for too as we get set to go green flag racing in a little bit as we take off here, but you're starting to see all these drivers begin to fall out. We saw Zach Novak come out of the server. I have a feeling we're going to see a few more drivers end up in trouble as well and fall out of this race. But as we circulate under the yellow flag, we'll remind you all that tonight's broadcast of the Esports Racing League is brought to us by our partners at SimSeats. Since 2009, SimSeats has been designing and fabricating high-quality driving simulators, including motion systems, custom fabricated parts, and complete turnkey iRacing packages, all made in the United States of America. Their customer base includes all kinds of drivers, from amateurs to professionals, and their passion for racing drives them to build better sim racing equipment. Don't limit your track time to the weekend. Visit www.sim-seats.com for more information. Briar LaPrade will be your leader. Lights are off on the pace car. This will be our first attempt at a green-white checker. For those unfamiliar with the rules, we will attempt to complete this race in 2 laps. We'll have 2 laps to go when we come to the line. We'll reset the lap count and extend the race in order to get to 2 laps to go. If we get a yellow flag before the leader comes across the start-finish line for the white flag, then we will try again. Up to 3 times, we'll take a crack at this. If we get the white flag and then get the yellow flag, the race will end on that final lap. The field will be frozen at the moment of caution, and we'll go pull our winner from the running order at that time. As Briar LaPrade and Lucas Cram were near the front, but it's going to be all about Briar LaPrade and Alex Bell with Donovan Strauss in tow as they come back to the line for our first green-white checker restart. And in a thinner pack, it's easier for LaPrade to jump out in front. He'll do that with Strauss in tow. BKE 1-2-1, Jeffrey.
Now everyone back there is single file. These drivers know they just have to make it to the end here. And as I say that, the 29, the 98 jump out of line. And everyone behind them is starting to get dicey. That allows for a run up at the front. Donovan Strauss to the lead with Alex Bell pushing. They're both clear.
Bell now having a huge jump from Donovan Strauss. Huge cut behind. Meanwhile, from one of the Nexus cars, Burrell's now up to third. LaPrade being held out to dry. Here comes Danson to make it 3 wide at the back of the pack. White flag this time.
Danson there with the white flag, but it's all Donovan Strauss and Alex Bell at the front. 1 lap to go, and the top flight computer's 125. And now here comes LaPrade with a big run on the outside to take the lead going into 1 with help from the 931 of Garrison Hogan. Jeffrey.
Now this is the $1 million question. Where do you want to be at the white flag? Where do you want to be coming off turn 4? You can be side by side. I've seen people out front win it. I've seen the guy in 18th win it. It all depends. These guys have to hold it together here, but right now they're side by side for the lead. Here comes another run from the 21. They're 3 wide.
three wide, two tandem packs. There goes Hogan. Hawks Bell up into the wall. Drag race side by side off the final corner. Strauss and LaPrade.
LaPrade's got the momentum, and I think he's going to get it, but it'll be a BKE 1-2 regardless as Brian LaPrade makes the run on the outside, working wins the top flank. Computers 125 at Daytona International Speedway. He got a big run there just before Garrison Hogan ranked in the middle of 3 and 4, and all of a sudden, once they were side by side and all by their lonesome, that wreck slowed up everybody else behind them. It was mano a mano between LaPrade and Strauss for the race win. And if you're Strauss, you're disappointed, JP, for sure. But at the same time, you know Parker Kligerman's going to be really happy with this 1 and 2 for the Burton Kligerman Esports drivers in tonight's race.
What a finish, to say the very least. LaPrade played the strategy well tonight, finding some friends, but in the end, it almost looked like him and a couple others were getting ditched towards the checker flag. Then found an error strong pusher, and in the end, timed out the run perfectly to take the checker flag, and what turned out to be a wild finish to this one, looking like many of his fellow drivers looking to celebrate with him.
So Brian LaPrade is going to burn it down here in 1 and 2. LaPrade, of course, one of the veterans from season 1 of the ERL back in the spring, and was able to claim a few victories of his own, most notably at Homestead Miami Speedway back in March. But this one, I think, has to be a little bit bigger, Jeffrey McConey. You consider the size of the field, how much bigger this is, how much more impressive the ERL is, and big work from LaPrade to get it done and bring the trophy back home to Manchester.
Absolutely right. What a phenomenal drive at the end there, but throughout the entire race, the key is to keep the car clean. You only have to lead one lap, and that's the last one. And Brian LaPrade did a fantastic job. He beat Donovan Strauss by 0.023 seconds. What an exciting ending there, where they were side by side coming to the line, and he saw Brian LaPrade start to cut down. He wasn't sure if he was going to be able to beat Donovan to the line, and he knew he needed to pull that air off to kill that run that Donovan had on the inside. Very smart driving there, and he certainly earned that win tonight.
Time to take a look at the full field rundown and tell you where your favorite driver finished. Brian LaPrade comes away with the victory over his teammate at Burton Kligerman Esports, Donovan Strauss. Zachary Phillips came home in the third spot. Fourth went to Dylan Basin. Colton Salick rounded out the top 5. Sixth went to the number 6 of Nathan Lyon. Anthony Burrows finished in 7th. 8th went to AJ Travato. Matt Danson finished in 9th. Nick Delicado was the last car in the top 10, JP.
Again, unofficial as DeWeese up to 11th spot. Brown in 12th position. De Blasio finished 13th at the stripe. Martinez in 14th position after a top 10 starting spot. John Midget went from 36th to 15th at the checkered. Rosales, Botello, Rice. Hogan, who was hooked to the last lap, rounded out the top 19. Kerner under review in that 20th position.
Eddie Kerner in 20th as it stands. Eli Hinton in 21st, but also hearing his spot is under review. Connor Horn finished in 22nd. 23rd, and the last car on the lead lap was Alex Bell. Nathan Rabideau finished in 24th. 25th went to Blake Reynolds. Alexander Krunke was 26th. 27th to Ryan Kendrick. Lucas Cram 28th. 29th, Zach Novak, and Jimmy Mobish rounded out the top 30, JP.
31st spot, Michael Finlayson, who was up front much of the race, was involved in one of the last caution flags in that big one down in the tri-oval. Caden Rush ended up getting hooked from a bad bump drop from behind from some of the Nexus cars. Tucker Minter specifically, who finished 34th, right behind his teammate Brendan McKissick. Presley Soar finished 35th. Ickes, Olsen, Wells, Neddens, and Bafford rounded out your 40 entrants tonight.
That is your full field rundown for this top flight Computers 125, the 4th race in the fall season for the Esports Racing League presented by SimSeats. We now bring in Patriot Breyer himself, Brian LaPrade, your winner tonight. And Breyer, 2 points here, I think. First off, take us through what happened in the trial the first time with Jack and Jimmy and everybody at the front of the field, and then we'll talk about what happened on the last lap.
Yeah, I felt terrible. It was just kind of a bot tier move. I seen Jimmy to my right getting out of shape, so I just wanted to try and give him room in case something happened and he had room to save it. They were just lined up really good, going, and then I focused back on trying to get the inside lane moving and lost just spatial awareness. and went up the track and ended up cleaning out the field. So not the most hype win, but yeah.
That last lap there with Donovan, and take us through your strategy there with the 98 machine and what you were trying to pull off on the outside on that last lap.
Just anything that could get us out front was what I was focused on. We ended up getting the run there, and they wrecked behind us, and kind of just had the run coming off 4. Just hoping he wasn't getting close so we couldn't netcode or anything. Just having the momentum on our side helped us win that one.
Get big momentum and get Darlington next week. I have to believe there are going to be a few decent candidates for some throwback schemes. And any idea where you're headed on that front for next week and what you're thinking you might do?
Well, we had a throwback scheme a little bit ago when we did the Firecracker 400 in July. So I think we're going to swing with that scheme again, orange and white scheme. It's dedicated to Cameron's dad and the car he drove back then. So I'm sure we'll go swing with that, and we'll bring it back next week and might be able to win. Hopefully it's not in this fashion again, but yeah, just figure out what to do and how to get better and learn, and hopefully not do it again.
I know a lot of people make it happen for you, Briar, so send your thank yous to Parker and to Jeff and to Cameron and to everybody else who deserves the love.
Yeah, of course, I got to thank the Burton Kligerman Esports partners, Valvoline, Rick Tech Simulators, Connecticut Realty, and JDR Graphics. And I also got to thank Cameron Ledford, of course, and what was on the car tonight, Ledford Billiard Supply. Check them out at ledfordbilliardsupply.com. And Lockdown Racing, of course. Wish we could have ended up 1, 2, 3, 4, but we got one car out front, and it was the one that cleaned out the field. So unfortunate. Like I said, we'll learn from our mistakes and move on.
Brian, thanks as always for the time. Congratulations on the victory, and we look forward to seeing you at Darlington next week.
Thank you.
Brian LeBrad, P1 tonight. It's his Burton Kligerman Esports teammate Donovan Strauss in the 51, who came home P2, and Donovan is with Justin Prince.
Now, Donovan should note that apparently position is now under review at this point. How are you feeling after this race after tonight?
So I'm just gonna come clean that I accidentally, I had the fast repair check, so I'm probably just gonna get that revoked. But either way, it was a rough race. Yeah, that was just rough.
Yeah, again, for those tuning in, all results are unofficial right now in this race till post-race review. But you're still in this said race and watching along with the action. What was your take in how everything fared out here?
Like I said, it was chaos. Definitely, there was a lot of wrecks there at the end. I was just trying to get through and get what I could. Obviously, like I said, it's probably gonna get taken away, but that's on me. So, whatever. I'll just have to move on to next week and hopefully get some more points, I guess.
Yeah, next race is at Darlington. Your thoughts there?
That'll be fun. It depends if it's a day or a night race, but either way, it should be fun. Just gonna try and make the race and hopefully get a ton of points.
Anyone you want to thank for being on the car tonight?
Yeah, I'd like to thank JDR Graphics, Valvoline, Burton Kligerman Esports, all my guys at Horizon for all they do for me on the road to pro side. Yeah.
Thank you very much for your time, Donovan.
Yep.
Donovan Strauss, again, unofficially P2. All of that under review, James.
A wild night here at Daytona, and a wild way to end the Top Flight Computers 125 before we head to Darlington Raceway next week. Bit of a different kind of challenge. This, a bit of a roulette draw in some senses, but Darlington, a driver's racetrack, one where you have to get up on the wheel, and it takes a certain amount of skill in order to be successful there. It might not be a surprise that Darlington was the home for the time attack for the fall season of the ERL, and the 80 drivers who threw down the best lap times advanced into the next round of qualifying. in the Esports Racing League presented by SimSeats. So you had some pretty good drivers who jumped into the ERL via that time attack. They've got a chance to take after Darlington again. And Jeff, I wonder if it may be Eddie Kerner's playhouse, since Eddie might have the biggest success at Darlington out of anyone this year. He won Landon Castle's qualifying challenge back in May and $10,000 with it. So might keep an eye on that number 98 for Scene. He, of course, also a eNASCAR Pro Series qualifier for the 2020 season. We'll see him try and race his way into the Coach Series for 21 a little bit later on this year, but he's not going to be the only threat to win at Darlington, I think.
No, you're absolutely right. And Darlington is the epitome of a driver's track. I mean, it seems like you either love the place or you hate it. Maybe that's why I'm not racing in this series. We'll chalk it up to that, as to it being the track. But I think we're going to see a lot of that next week. Of certain drivers are just going to excel the entire race, and for other drivers, they're just going to be along for the ride trying to collect points, because it's just as much of a race that's up in the air as Daytona is. Anything can happen at a place like Darlington. It's arguably the most difficult track on the circuit.
It is arguably one of the hardest places to race, Justin Prince, and especially in the daylight like we'll see it. It will get hot, it will get slick. We are in a little bit further east of the Sand Hills of North Carolina and South Carolina, but we know how that region of the Southeast is very well known for chewing up tires. The sand blows through the wind and grinds the racetrack down and makes it a gigantic cheese grater for tires. So you're going to have to be careful how you lay the rubber down to the pavement at Darlington. Always a test of tire wear is that racetrack, and I expect next Wednesday night to be no different.
And tires may be the end-all be-all on that type of race, because there is a dramatic amount of fall-off, because that cheese grater effect can see up to 2 to 3 seconds of fall-off, with many drivers in turn struggling off some of the corner exits. It's going to be a very tricky one, where if you get a long green flag run, whoever saves the tires the best is likely taking the checker flag in that race. If you don't save your tires, you're getting either a Darlington stripe or a Darlington sledgehammer to your quarter panels.
Plenty of action to work with here, and plenty of madness to try and shuffle along over the course of the next week before we get to Darlington. Before we work our way through to September, let's take a look one more time at the events that you will see over the next week in iRacing, and we'll see what can happen with all the fun stuff that is going to be on the airwaves, starting with the Cards Esports Tour coming up in about 20 minutes time from Larry King Law's Langley Speedway. You can catch that on twitch.tv/Podium Esports at the top of the hour. Then on Sunday night, the GameWorks Racing League will take to the Paperclip. Martinsville Speedway will be in the mix. We'll see that broadcast on the Podium Esports Twitch channel at 8 p.m. Eastern. The Sim 500 Trans-Service Cup Series visits Darlington as well. They'll race Monday night at 9 p.m. Eastern. And then the ERL is back on air from Darlington next Wednesday night, 7:30 p.m. Eastern on the ERL Twitch channel and all the platforms that you currently see us upon. PCA Sim Racing kicks off Season 5 next Friday night at 7 p.m. Eastern on the PCA Sim Racing YouTube before the For the Fans Racing League Grand National Series presented by Splash Video Graphics also visits Darlington Raceway next Saturday night, September 5th, 10 p.m. Eastern Time. That too on twitch.tv/Podium Esports. Plenty of storylines to carry with us into Darlington, but at the end of it all, it is all Briar LaPrade for Burton Kligerman Esports at the end of the evening, taking home the Top Flight Computers 125. For all of us here at Podium Esports, for Cisco Scaramuzza, Gary Sexton, John Theodore behind the glass, for Anthony Alfredo, Chris Mulhall, Strix Pulsar Drinks, and Zach Johnson at the Esports Racing League, for my colleagues in the booth, Justin Prince and Jeff McConey, and for our producer, Ryan Bauer, powered by Top Flight Computers. I am James Punt, the voice of Podium Esports. Thank you so much for watching our broadcast of the Esports Racing League presented by SimSuits. We look forward to seeing you in 20 minutes time on the Podium Esports Twitch channel for the Cards Esports Tour from Larry King Law's Langley Speedway.